Yo, dogs and dogettes, do we have a great Tuesday English class? The reason I say that is it's itty bitty short. And that's the way we like our classes to be, huh? I think what you're trying to say is thank you. In the words of Maui, you're welcome. So, it is going to be a short class. I'd encourage you to invest more of your time elsewhere in your studies. Do some of your work maybe that still could be outstanding and not in a good way. It's still standing outside when it should be turned in. Finish some of that up if you have it at any test, and make sure that you're getting all those things to me and to Miss Nicole, and for that matter, to your other teachers as well. We're going to get right to it. I know it looks like it's going to be a pretty lengthy class because there's a lot on the board. I apologize if it's a little crammed, if at times, especially on what you're seeing to the right, it seems like it's a little jumbled. Of course, I'm going to say everything that's on the board and more, so turn up the volume and listen closely, and you'll still be able to take down, and I'll point to make sure you know where we are. I'm sorry, it's kind of boring stuff, pretty easy. Hey, it is what it is. More spelling rules. No, it might not be leaps and bounds fun. However, these are things that we need to know not only to speak well, but especially for our class to be able to read and to write well. And we're going to be finishing up our quarter, as I've already told you, with 2, not 1, but 2 more, but I think pretty fun writing assignments, and they're going to be a little more lax. I'm not going to really hold your guys' feet to the fire on those. You do a decent job and put some effort into it, incorporate the things that we've learned, and you will be rewarded in your grade for those too. So some more dumb old spelling rules. I and E and I. We've known this since we were little kids, but we are going to go a little bit more in depth. So make sure you take notes. You can use these on your test, and they'll help you with your writing as well. I and E and I. Number 1, with the sound. Now, not necessarily just an E itself that's written, but with the sound of a long E in a word. I comes before E, except after. Remember, in life, there's always a rule, then there's always an exception to every rule, and there is here too. The rule is, with a long E sound, I comes before E, except when preceding the letter C. When it comes after C, you flip. You reverse the order, and it's E-I, not I-E. For instance, 1A, the word niece, E. It has an E sound, a long E sound. I comes before E because those two letters precede and not proceed, or they come before and not after the letter C. Brief, that's an E sound. I comes before E. Peace, E sound, long E. I comes before E. What are the exceptions to that? If you have a C and then the vowels I and E are coming after, then you arrange them in reverse order. E-I. Deceit. That's a long E sound, however, they come after a C, and therefore it's E-I, not the other way around. Conceive. Long E sound, E-I, because they come after a C. Deceive. Okay, E, long E sound, it's E-I, not the other way around, because again, they're coming after a C. Now, here's the thing that's kind of frustrating. In English, not only are there exceptions to the rule, but there are exceptions to the exceptions to the rule. So, make of that what you will. Some exceptions. Either, some say either. I disagree. Technically, either is correct, either. However, I do believe first pronunciation would be the long E, either. But it's E-I, even though there's no C that precedes it. C's, long E sound, but E comes before I, even though they don't come after a C. And there are a number of other examples that I could give you, but I just want to put a couple of those up here. But just remember, the main thing is the general rule, and when in question, if you'll follow this much more often than right, and that's, you'll be right than wrong, and that's why it's called the rule. With a long E, I comes before E, except after C. Okay, 2. With a long A sound, E comes before I. With a long A sound, okay, now A's not going to be used, but it's going to have that sound from EI, and E comes before I whenever that's the case. And I have A and B here, but really these are all the same. There's no difference between what you see in A, there's no difference between what you see in B. To be really honest with you, I just prefer symmetry so much, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night if I didn't have an AB on this one like I do in that one and that one. I know it's sad, but it's life. So, 2A, neighbor, not like a horse, neigh. Oh wait, that's a goat. Anyway, or a sheep or something. That's not a horse, that's for sure. What would it be? Anyway, I'm going to quit now. So, neighbor, but neigh, the way you say the word, it's a long A sound even though it's EI, but it's in that order because it makes the long A. Rain, not like it's been doing some this week, but rain like a king reigns, okay? And that's R-E-I, E-I, because it's A, re-A, long A sound. Weigh, like you're wanting to see how many pounds you've been gaining over the quarantine period, and so you weigh yourself. Long A sound, therefore it's E-I. And then a vein, like what you have in your body, is one example of that. That's going to be E-I because it's A, an A sound, even though it's not an A letter, vein. Okay, number 3. With 2 separately pronounced vowels, you spell according to the pronunciation of the word. So in other words, when you have an I or an E or an E, or I'm sorry, if you have an E or an I or an E, there we go, I think I haven't spit out right that time, then you're going to spell it according to the way it's properly stated or pronounced. For instance, under 3A, quiet. You see, you pronounce both of those letters, the E and the I together, but the reason you spell it with an I first is because you say it as qui, and then you pronounce the E, and therefore, the I comes before the E. Variety, you say it vari, and then you pronounce the E, et, and therefore the I in the spelling comes before the E. Science, you pronounce both letters, but because you pronounce the I, yet another long I first, then you spell it with an I, then the E. Now look down here. It can be, though, as an example, and you're not going to see this as much, I don't have as many on here. In fact, I only have one. But under 3B, atheist. But notice you say athee, you pronounce the E as a long E first, therefore you put the E, and then ist, you pronounce the I, and so then you have that in second place. Guess what? There are exceptions to that rule. And they're the same base word, but technically 2 different terms. Alien. Alien, you pronounce the E first, but unfortunately, you spell it with the I before the E. And then a word that's conjugated or it's developed from this base word, alienate, again you have E being stated first. However, you spell it with an I and then an E. Remember, it's English, so there are just about always exceptions to the rule. And if you'll notice in these suffixes over here, I have to tell you, well, but do not at the end, but do not at the end, but do not at the end. So, I mean, there are going to be some exceptions, but remember, these are the rules. Okay, for suffixes. 1, doubling a final consonant. You want to double a final consonant in a word. If you have a 1-syllable word ending with 1 vowel, then 1 consonant. Okay, see, like this word right here. If you have a 1-syllable word ending with 1 vowel and then 1 consonant, then you can add something to it, but before you do, you must double that last consonant that is found. Not continent, that's different, right? But consonant that is found. So for instance, rap, not like, I'm not rapping like that, but I'm like, wrapping an Easter present, or I'm dealing with a wrapper. Oh, a candy wrapper. Hey, let's use that word, okay? I want to take rap and I want to conjugate it, meaning I want to lengthen it. I want to add to that word via suffix or which means just put something on the end of the word to make a new one. You might recall at the beginning of the year when we played Scrabble. Okay, you can put a suffix on the end of the word and still have the base word itself and get a whole bunch of points from that in that game. But wrapper, W-R-A-P, if I want to say not rap, but rapper, I can do that with an E-R, but because I have a one-syllable word prior that ends in a vowel, then a consonant, I have to add or duplicate that last letter in that word before I put the suffix of ER on the end that I greatly desire. So wrapper, you have to add a P and an ER because it's a one-syllable word that ends with a vowel and a consonant. 1B, if you have a multi-syllable word, meaning 2 or more syllables, with the main accent being on the final ending, and it has one vowel and one consonant, okay, what you have to do is look, first of all, does it end with a vowel? Yes. Then a consonant? Yes, okay. Is it a multi, meaning a 2 or more syllable word? Commit. Commit. Yes, 2 syllables, okay. Then if that's the case, and the accent is on the last syllable, you know you never want to put the emphasis on the wrong syllable, right? It's important to pronounce words correctly. You don't say commit, you say commit. See, the emphasis is on the last syllable. Then, once again, you're going to duplicate the last letter, which is T, and you're going to add an ED on the end. And you could say that somebody is committed to a cause. Now, 1C, exception to the rule, do not add a final consonant to a word if the word is ending with 2 vowels and then 1 consonant. Now, both of these have been 1 vowel, 1 consonant as the ending, then you add the extra consonant. But in this case, if you have 2 vowels and then you have a consonant at the end, then in that case, you do not add. For instance, if you have the word shoot and you want to say not I shoot at targets out in the field, but I am shooting, okay, you don't add a T, all you do is add ing. And the reason for that is you have 2 vowels that precede the consonant, and that's a good rule of thumb. Okay, number 2, changing the final Y to an I. Changing a Y to an I. If you have a word ending with a consonant and then Y, okay, a consonant and then you have it ending in a Y, then you change the Y to an I before you add your suffix. For instance, if you want to say accompanied, let's say that Nikolai accompanied Ken, okay, to do his chores at his house. And so you had accompany, which ends in a Y and has a consonant as an N that appears before it. But to say accompanied and to spell it correctly, you have to change the Y to an I before you add your ED. The reason for that is you have a word ending with a consonant and then a Y. Now, 2B, do not change the Y to an I if your suffix that you're going to use already begins with an I. Okay? Like we did up here, if we're wanting to change accompany to accompanying, would that be right? Accompanying? I think that's pronouncing it correctly. Then because the suffix ing already starts with an I, you don't want to change your Y to an I because then you're going to have ing, and we're not playing we, okay? W-I-I, so that's just plumb silly. And what we're going to do is just put an ing and leave the Y in place, even though another form of that same word would need to be changed to Y to an I. Those are the rules behind. Okay, 3. Dropping the final silent E. We have done this left and right since we came out of the womb. We're okay with this, I think. 3A. When preceded by a consonant, the E that is, the final silent E in a word, when preceded by a consonant, and the suffix begins with a vowel, okay, then you drop the silent E. For instance, we've used this a few times. Let's do this one more here. If you have atone, the word atone, and you want to make it atoning, you drop the silent E, you add ing. Why do you do that? Because there is a consonant and then there was a silent E. Because a consonant preceded or came before the silent E, you drop the silent E and you just add ing. However, do not drop the E when the suffix begins with a consonant. Okay? When the suffix begins with a consonant, do not drop the E on the root word to which you're adding on. For instance, if you have involve and you want to make out of that involvement, because the suffix begins with a consonant, an M, do not drop the silent E, but keep it, even though it's preceded by a consonant, because the first letter in the suffix, or the conclusion to the word that you're adding on, begins with a consonant. Keep the silent E and just add what the suffix is. M-E-N-T makes the word involvement. Okay? Isn't that easy? Told you it wouldn't be bad. So, those are more spelling rules. And thankfully, we're done with English for Tuesday. Thanks, guys.